Hey, what's up guys? Today in this tutorial, we are going to create a first animation with the level sequencer, and then we are going to interact that animation with the help of level blueprint. After that, we are going to create a cinematic sequence and make that interactable. Okay, let's start guys. So here in this scene, I have used stylized environment which is from a marketplace. You can find it out, and you can see here I have been set up a gate here and uh, with a door, right? And I'm using a third person template in this tutorial to understand like how the functionality works, how we can interact the created animation in the levels sequence, right? So first of all, let me tell you what the scene setup is. I have a gate here, you can see that, and I have a scene, I have a player start, I think. Let me zoom out the scene. I have adjusted a player start here. I added player start from the place actors tab, where you can find out and the basic shapes. No, I placed it here. Okay, let me place it in front of the gate. I need player to get outside of this gate. Okay, so let me adjust player start and let me play. Okay, if the player enter this location, automatically the door to be unlocked. Okay, that's what we are going to do in the first step. Okay, so for this we are going to make sure that how the player can record the certain location so that the door can detect that location and animate it accordingly. That means I need to unlock the door, I need the gate to be open. So before doing this phase, first we understand how to create an animation. Okay, the first step before creating an animation, first you are going to create an animation sequencer. So I am going to store that animation sequencer in the new folder. I'm going to rename it as animations sequencers, and in this folder let me create a sequencer. From asset section, go to the cinematics, and here go to level sequence. Let me rename this as door animation. So let me double click. You can see the sequencer is open right now. So this is the place where we actually animate our door animation. Here you can see you have a couple of tools on top of it, and the left side where you can add an objects and actors, where you can toggle with some parameters of the actors and animate it accordingly in the timeline section. This is the place where you actually add a keyframes to animate the particular actor. Okay, and this is the time frame, and you can see you have three different lines in the timeline. You can see the green one is the place where the actual frame starts, as well as the red one where it ends, and the slider here where you actually slide it and drag it accordingly and see which is your current frame and how does that look like and how does that placed over here, right? So, and on the bottom of it you can see that you have a timeline here, right? So this timelines indicate the entire sequence timeline, which is minus 015 to I think it's 10165 in this animation sequencer. So I'm gonna add this door, hit hotkey yes on the keyboard, or directly you can add door, drag and drop to the sequencer. Now I need to animate this door with the keyframes. So how do I do that? So I have some parameters here. You can see the transformation, I have a location, rotation, and scaling parameters in this. So I want to change the location of this store towards Z axis, something like this. Okay, so let me add a keyframe in the first slider. You can see that here you can find out how the keyframe added. Enter is the hotkey where you can add a keyframe anywhere the slider is, right? So I can drag the slider to some of the frames here. Let me change my the z-axis position of the store to some how would you prefer, something like this, and press enter on the keyboard or directly press keyframe here. Okay, now if you press play space on the keyboard, you can see it's automatically plays. Yeah, something like that. So the point is, let me finish the frame. I can also go for more smoother animation by increasing more number of frames. Yeah, something like this. Let's see, it's totally smoother. Yeah, and one more thing. Once, whenever you're trying to place an animation, something like this, make sure you select this particular animation fine, right? So let me drag and drop this store animation into the sequencer. Okay, and get to the details panel. Make sure in the details panel, make sure this is not autoplay, because furtherly we are going to make the player interact with the trigger based animations. But for that, make sure this is not checked as autoplay and not as a loop. If I selected a loop and an autoplay, you can see that if I simulate in the viewport, automatically the animation plays continuously because I selected a loop. So I don't need that. So I don't want to loop, and I also don't want to play this animation automatically. So make those changes without in a play mode. Okay, let me keep it to don't loop and autoplay. Okay, if I play, you can see that the smooth animation is done. And there is one more, the option pause at end. So when the whenever, sometimes when you feel like if the animation doesn't finished at the keyframe where you require, it stops at the keyframe 1 again. So you can also use this pause at end to true. Okay, now so we are done with the animation, but the point is we are going to make some interactable. If the player interacted with a trigger or something, the animation need to play according to that. So for that, I am going to add a trigger box from the place actors tab. I'm going to search for a trigger box. You can place a trigger box here. Okay, and from this, let me increase the trigger box here. I think this size is enough for now. Yeah. As soon as player enters this trigger box, this animation should play. That is our first target. So to do that, so let us tell the Unreal Engine that if what happens if the player interacts with this trigger box. To do that, first let us select this trigger box in the level sequencer, and then we'll get to the level blueprint. You can access the level blueprint with this blueprint section. You can see the blueprint class, and you can also see level blueprint section here. Let me click on open level blueprint. This is the place where you can create an interactive part of an animation, right? So here you can see this blueprint contains few of the options like you have a graph section, function section, and the variables, macros. This will help you to create more development part of the whatever the required in your level. And you can see this is the graph area where you actually make the development process with the help of blueprints nodes. So let me right click and add an event, right? So I'm going to add an event because I need to initiate something, right? To initiate, you are going to create an event. To create that, you are going to create an event with the help of with the reference of for trigger box. The trigger box which I selected is actually trigger box 3. You can see in the outliner the trigger box which is selected with the, I think the current trigger box is the number 3. You can see right click. If I'm trying to add an event, it is showing for trigger box 3. That is the trigger box which we selected. And then I'm going to add an event on collision. Okay, in collision, you have 3 options here. Add on actor begin overlap, add on actor end overlap, add on actor hit. So here we are trying to make sure that the player, when the player enters the trigger box, you know, this animation sequence should play. So for that, I am using add on actor begin overlap. I'm initiating an event here, right? Yeah. And next, let me test. Let me to test out. I am going to use a print node where we can actually print whatever the message that we require to test out any functions or whatever we are initiating. So let me use the print string. Okay. So here playing animation. Right after the player enters the trigger box, the animation should play. Let me check compile is required right after any changes you make in the blueprint. And let me open the map. Let me play. You can see that. Yeah. If the player enter the trigger box, you can see that on the left side a message pop up which is playing animation. How many times if you overlap with that, and you can see the multiple number of times the message pops up. So that's how the interactions happen. But in this case, what if it is it is not an NPC? What if, sorry, not a player, if it is an NPC or any other object, if it is overlap with this trigger box, obviously the trigger box will initiate, I mean the actor begin overlap will initiate the further actions. So for that you need to make sure only if the player is overlap, then the code should initiate the further process. So to do that, you are going to connect the player to the trigger box. You are going to, make sure only player is overlap with the trigger box. To do that, I am going to use a cast node. Cast node is something where you actually, connecting with the class blueprint, you can access any kind of components, your variables, or some parameters from the other blueprint. With the help of cast we can do that. So I'm going to bring out the template player blueprint, which is third person. I use third person template. Okay, and then I'm connecting my other actor. So who is going to overlap? That is third person character. If when the event initiated, I'm checking if third person is overlap, and then it prints playing animation. I think nothing changes right now because there is only the player in the frame. You can see the playing animation is working fine. Now let's move forward. So point is, I want this animation sequence should be initiated when the player enters. So to do that, let me actually put my door animation sequence into the viewport just for a reference. Let me select this animation, and then let's enter to the level blueprint. Here, by selecting the animation sequence, I am going to take that a reference. I'm going to take the door animation as a reference, and then I'm playing the animation. Let me type a node play. With the help of sequence player, this door animation is going to play. Without sequencer player, it is we cannot access the door animation in this phase, right? So I need to use sequence player to play the door animation. And let me compile and play. You can see, let if I the player enters, you can see the left side playing animation is popped up, but there is no animation. So what's the problem? Let us check in the level blueprint. You can see I actually added a player node blueprint, but I am not connected to this blueprint. Let me connect this continuation executable node to the play, compile, and then play. You can see that if the player enters into this trigger box, you can see the smooth animation is played, and you can see right after the animation done, the end frame, the gate actually comes to the first keyframe, right? So what we do, just get to the door animation, select this door animation in the outliner and get to the detailed section. Here you can see you have a small option in the playback which is pause at hand. Let me make it to true and let me try once again. If I play, if it moves to the trigger box, you can see a smooth animation is playing and it stops. It won't come to its original phase because we actually stopped our animation to its last keyframe by making sure this pass at end, which is true. Okay, so we are done with the interacting animation, but the point is, so right after the player enters, okay, the animation complete, you can see that. So what I need, when the player entered to this particular location, or else when the player exits the trigger box, automatically this animation should play reverse. For example, what if player want to go back once again? So we need to have a solution, right? So to solve that easily, we can use the previous trigger box. Let me select the trigger box. Let me increase the size of the trigger box. I think this is more than enough as far as, yeah, something like this. Okay, let me play. Let me check. Player enters the trigger box, playing animation. Okay, done. I need to check. I need to reverse the play, the animation what we done when the player exits the trigger box. So we can do that in the same level blueprint. So for that, you make sure the trigger box is selected. Get to the level blueprint, and here, same as we done the previous. So before doing that, let me comment this section with select all the nodes and see and play door animation. Let me rename it to play door. Let me change the color. What are the color you require? This is for play. Okay. So now, same as this, we are going to repeat the process for reverse animation. So on actor begin overlap, we have done that. Once you right click right after selecting the trigger box, you can see that add event for trigger box. I'm going to add a collision event again. This time I'm going to add actor and overlap. So same as we done, we are going to check whether the person is, here you can see that whether the player is right off the trigger box or not. That is what we are trying to check it out. Okay, accidentally closed the tab. That's okay. So Control D is the where you can duplicate. We have a lot of compression process. For now, I'm trying to showcase a step-by-step process. Maybe the nodes repeated, but you can understand how this process would takes place, right? So let me connect the trigger box actor to the player, which is third person character, and here I'm going to print string. Let me check, you know, play reverse. Let me print play reverse, compile, and let me try whether it's working or not. Play, player enters the trigger box. Okay, reverse is also accessed because of the bigger. You can see the play reverse is working fine. But here I can see a animation. I need reverse animation because the animation should close right after the player ends. That is what we are going to do in the first phase. So let me come back, and here in the map section I am going to use the same animation but a different node. With the help of sequence player I am going to use a reverse node. You can see that same animation. With the help of sequence player I am playing it into a reverse. Compile, and then also there's small let me uh, scale this trigger box, sorry, to smaller because it's causing some issues because of spacing overlap in and out. Yeah, let me play. Player enters the trigger box. It's playing an animation, maybe overlap. Okay, player exits the trigger box, and you can see the reverse animation played right after I entered. You can see, let me check, playing animation. This is where the trigger box is, and right after I exit you can see the animation play. This is how we can actually interact the animation with the help of level blueprint, right? So any doubts in this? Obviously you can feel free to comment in the comment box. Yeah, so let's move further. This is how we actually interacted the sequence animation. By using the same process I'm going to do a cinematic animation right now and access accordingly with the level blueprint. So to do that, what I do, right after the player exits, right, or else right after the player exits this trigger box, I want a cinematic animation to be played, like to exploring the environment or what, maybe something like that. A camera animations to be played right after the player exits the trigger box. Only from this side, or else you can place another trigger box as well as you're comfortable with that, right? So for now, what I do, let me create another sequence for cinematic. Sure, let me capture the cinematic scene and then make that animation interactable with the player again. So to do that, let me create another new sequencer, cinematic level sequencer. I'm gonna call it as cinematic sequencer, which is underscore. Okay, let me open the cinematic sequencer here. Okay, and I need a camera. So if you directly click on this setup here, automatically you will get a camera cut and a camera. So here you can see whatever the frame where you can find is completely a camera perspective. So I want my viewport as well as my camera. If you want both in one viewport, you can actually change your layouts to multiple, maybe 2 by 2, something like that. You can see. So here you can select the camera and you can switch. Sorry, you can see whatever the viewport you're working on. You can switch. Click on this camera icon to switch whatever the camera preview you required, or you can directly view it from your third person camera perspective. This right? Yeah. So this is the place where a camera exists. So let me create some small cinematic shot here. So right after the camera player enters to that particular scene, so let me adjust my camera, something like that. Okay, a small movement towards this plant. Okay, I can also change my camera lens in the detail section to, you can see, We have a lot of options of the camera. We will discuss that clearly later, but right now I'll just want to change a camera settings, a small lens settings here, right? Yeah. So here you have a 16:9. The you want the other setting, as well as the prime lens would be for 35 mm, 16 mm zoom lens. You can select it accordingly. With the help of that, you can find out here prime lens and zoom lens. This is also prime lens. So I need a 30 mm would works fine for me, I think. So yeah, let me check. 50 would be great. Yeah. So let me adjust the camera. Okay, same as the door animation, I'm gonna animate the camera as well. So let me select the camera, and here I need the camera transformation keyframe to be added. Okay, at the first keyframe you can place it accordingly, and after some frames, let me directly move my camera towards the tree. You can see that it's total a little moment, and then add another keyframe. You can see, let me play this, a smooth animation I require. Okay, this is a small shot what I require. Okay, now we are going to add a second camera. Okay, so to do that, let me get to the cinematic tab. Here the place actors, can find cinematic, and here let me get cine camera actor. We'll rename this to camera 2. Okay, let me drag and drop this camera 2 in the camera 1. I think, let me switch to the double layouts once again. Yeah, so this is my camera 2. So what animation should I work with? For example, let me fastly walk through, and as well as rotation and the location, both let me try to animate and see how this works. Okay, so let me add a keyframe somewhere right after the camera 1 animation ends. I'm adding a keyframe to lock its current position from here, and after some time let me pass through something like this. Maybe if you require rotation or what, let me add another keyframe. I just want to walk through some distance. You can see this is only the position, and if you want detailed animation, you are going to access according to the no more. You can see how distant the path is, something like that. 1 2 3 4. Okay, 4 to 5 seconds. 1 2 3 4. So let me add both the cameras in one cut. Here select the camera cut. Okay, so here first let me switch to the camera cut preview, and here the first one, let me get to the first slide and then add a camera 1. So this is a first camera animation, and after this camera animation, select the plus again, add a camera 2. You can see right after this animation plays over there. So let me end my slide based on the keyframe. Let me add this keyframe to the final part. I think this will works. Or else you can increase the keyframe size. It doesn't matter where your keyframe is, but it only matters when you want to play that accordingly. Based on the speed matters here. Okay, this is how the camera was animated, camera 1 and camera 2 both. What's happened here, we are trying to access both the cameras in the camera cut here, right? You're placing a camera 1 as well as the camera 2 in the camera cuts. So this is my entire sequence. So now we are going to access this the entire sequence, right? I want let me see, disconnect this relative. I want to access the entire sequencer when the player exit from this trigger box. Right after the trigger box ends, when player is from the trigger box end, this animation should take place. So same as we did that the previous. So let's get to the map. Here on actor and overlap, I'm going to play the trigger box. I'm not going to play the reverse animation. Let me uncheck this node and keep it here for now. I want to play a cinematic animation right now. So to do that, open your content browser, control space, hotkey, and bring your cinematic sequencer in the viewport. Okay, I think I already had both. Okay, cinematic sequencer. Select that as it for a reference, and here you are going to create a reference for that cinematic animation which you done, and directly you are going to use a play node with the help of sequence player. Okay, let me adjust it. When the player on and overlap, so I'm gonna print cinematic, and then let me play the cinematic animation compile. So we'll see, we'll play and see. Before playing, I want my layout to be single. Okay, let's play. When the player enters, okay, playing animation, you can see the door animation. When the player exits, automatically you can see the cinematic animation is played. But there is some glitch. You can see that I need door also to be closed as well as the animation to be played, and at the same time it should contain some time space. So it's directly when the player exits, the animation is picking up from that timeline, so I need some space to that. I'm going to add a delay first here. So let me add a delay on about 2 seconds, or as 1 second is also enough. We'll play once again. Let me continue. Open. After 2 seconds, a cinematic animation and exit. But one thing you can see that the door is not closed. I want to close it as well. So I can connect both the play nodes for for this end overlap part. So how do I do that? The same way. Let me connect the sequence player, the reference of this animation for a reverse, and then I'm connecting my continuation node to the reverse section here, and I'm connecting the same delay right after the closing the door. There would be an animation here, right? Directly I'm not playing an animation after that. First the door will close, and then there would be a 2 minutes till 2 seconds delay, and the other animation would be played. So this is my reverse door and cinematic animation. Let me compile and play. We'll check one by one clearly. Player enters into the door, door animation plays, player exit, door animation closed. After 2 seconds, no, the cinematic animation continues. You can see the door is closed right now. So this is how you're going to create a basic animation with the help of sequencer and interact that animation in a level blueprint. As well as you are going to create a cinematic sequence in the sequencer, and that sequencer is also an interactable when the player wants. So it's up to you, like when you want to trigger that cinematic act sequence. So by the end of this tutorial, you are going to learn creating a basic animations. You're going to learn a creating a cinematic sequences. Also, you are going to interact with them in the gameplay whenever it is required. For example, you are going to collect a key, right? You're going to place cinematic animation before collecting a key where the key is located. So to place that, you are going to create a cinematic animation for that, that is required. So these kinds of basic animations plays a crucial role while making an interactive experiences for the gameplay. So I hope you understand this tutorial. If you have any doubts, you can please comment down below. And so let me recap once again how we did that and what we did that in a quick view. You can see that. So first I actually set up my door here, and then I want to create a door animation. So I did that for by creating a cinematic sequencer by right clicking a cinematics and level sequence here. I created a door animation sequencer, and in this sequencer I added a door, and then I added multiple keyframes to animate the door in one axis, which is Z I required. After the animation, I actually entered the blueprint, and here with the help of this trigger box, I actually this trigger box is very important to create any collision enters program, something like that. So for that development process, you are going to use this trigger box, and then I use the trigger box to initiate an event here on actor begin overlap. So I'm checking whether if the player is overlapped the trigger box. I'm actually checking that okay, it is working with the print string here playing animation, and if it is overlap with the player, automatically the door animation should play. With the help of sequencer player, the animation I created, the sequencer I created, I took a reference by right clicking with the selected actor in the viewport. Okay, and the same way, right after the player exit the trigger box, I use the same player as a overlap part here, and then I'm debugging the actual animation when the player exit, and playing the reverse animation, the same animation in a reverse mode when the player and overlap. So this is what we done in the first phase. After that, the second phase part is about like creating a cinematic animation and access according to with the interactivity, right? So for that, I created another cinematic sequence, and here I created a camera cut. You can directly click on this icon to create a camera cut here. With the help of that, you will have a one camera automatically, or else directly you can add a camera from the place actors and cinematics in the cine camera actor also, right? So after adding a camera, just like door animation, I created a cinematic animation. A couple of frames have been captured, whether the tree or the flowers, whatever you require, you can capture it accordingly. So a basic couple of frame animation have captured something like this, and I have added another camera, and in this camera I have couple of frames was captured. So I tried to connect both of this camera and the camera card with the help of this plus icon here, right where I required in the time frame. You just place the slider and click on the camera you require. Automatically the both the cameras would be added. This is how created a cinematic sequence here. And after this, I directly dive into the blueprint again. So I try to interact that particular cinematic animations. You know, for that I actually put my cinematic sequencer in the viewport, and with the reference of the cinematic sequencer, I'm trying to play the cinematic animation with the delay of 2 seconds. Right? So when the player exit the trigger box, automatically the reverse animation will place, and then after 2 minutes 2 seconds delay, it went to the cinematic sequencer. This is how I actually try to communicate. So let me play. Player enters to the trigger box, and the door animation plays and stops at the end, and right after the exits, the cinematic starts after the 2 seconds, as well as the door closes at a time. If you need accurately, you can make the cinematic stop more seconds right after the door close. You can make sure that. But this is how the fundamental part that you are gonna understand the interactivity of the cinematics in the Unreal Engine 5. I hope you guys got it what we are trying to convey. Yep. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Just please drop any comments if you have any. Yep. Till then, take care. Bye bye.